Hello, everyone, and welcome back to People Do Want to Know podcast. I'm very excited for you to hear today's conversation with Ariella Novak. Ariella Novak is a broadcast journalist and co-founder of Bottom Line Media, as well as the nonprofit Shield Giving, where she leads broadcast coverage, develops strategic communications, and works to educate and ensure accuracy in broadcast and print media. With over a decade of experience in news, public affairs, and nonprofit communications, she is a respected contributor across CNN, Bloomberg, CNBC, ABC, Fox, MSNBC, and CBS News. Drawing on her extensive media background, Ariella is widely recognized for her expertise in political and strategic communications and for her commitment to combating anti-Semitism, advancing humanitarian efforts, and addressing bias in both media and politics. At Bottom Line Media, she co-launched the first ever off-the-record Birthright experience for journalists, leading delegations to Israel to cut through the noise, challenge assumptions, and provide an unfiltered understanding of the region's complexities. Ariella is also pioneering an innovative tool for newsroom integrity, including developing a customized, fact-driven version of ChatGPT designed to help journalists verify news wires and assess the accuracy of breaking information in real time. The prototype for this is now complete, with plans underway for broader implementation across partner newsrooms. Her work extends beyond the newsroom through the Shield Fellowship, where she trains university students facing anti-Semitism to elevate their stories and drive meaningful change across broadcast, print, and digital platforms. Under her guidance, participants in this fellowship have gone on to contribute to major outlets, testify before Congress, and advocate powerfully for their communities. Guided by the belief that informed voices shape a stronger society, Ariella's career reflects a deep dedication to using communication as a force for good, empowering the next generation to inform, engage, and lead with purpose. Now, it's no secret that media feels more complicated and misleading than ever. And so bringing Ariella on to get her take on how to understand and consume media was super valuable. This episode is full of one helpful lesson after another, and you're going to learn a lot. I have to say that this may have been one of my favorite episodes I've ever done on the show because I've just learned so much. Ariella's story is also just very unique and fascinating. So thank you for the conversation, Ariella, and also your mentorship. Please enjoy this episode. Hello, Ariella. Welcome to People Do Want to Know podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
I'm very excited to chat. My first question for you is tell us about yourself. What do you do and how did you get there?
Before I even answer your question, I just want you to know, usually I'm on the other end of it where I'm asking the questions. So this is quite refreshing. So about myself, I actually didn't take a usual path, you see. People think, oh, I wanted to go into journalism my whole life, and surprise, it's actually not it. I was actually going to go to culinary school. Most people don't know this. The French Culinary Institute here in Soho. And one day I woke up and I decided, what am I going to do? Bake bread for people at 4 a.m? I'm not doing this. And I happened to read an article on AOL News all about working in journalism. And there's an internship opportunity coming up at ABC News, and I'm going to go apply. I'm going to interview. So I call my mom. I go, Mom, guess what? I'm going to be a journalist. And she goes, sure, Ariella, and I'm going to be the President of the United States of America. And I said, God, okay, thanks, Mom. I hung up the phone, and a few weeks later was the interview opportunity, and I waited in line with 600 other people at ABC News, all for this unpaid internship with 12 spots. And I interviewed for the newsroom as well as for a show called Live with Regis and Kelly. I didn't even know about it. My grandmother liked this. I'm like, all right. I did not get the newsroom opportunity that I wanted, but don't worry. Day 2 of my internship, I went down to the newsroom, knocked on the head of WABC News, and I said, excuse me, I would like to know, why didn't you hire me? And he paused, and he looked at me and goes, I remember you. You didn't know your governor. And I said, yes, I do. So the way it works is you interviewed at the interview in groups of 4, but unfortunately he had the wrong resume up. So he thought I was somebody else. So when he asked the question, he had thought I was from Texas, but I was from New Jersey. So I looked at him and said, sir, actually with due respect, I'm sure Texas is lovely. I've never been. I know my governor. I'm from New Jersey. And he looked with big eyes and goes, don't worry. I'm so sorry. I'm going to help you find your first job. And he was a man of his word, and he did. And he introduced me to some folks in the ABC News side, and that's how I started off. And I worked at 2020. What would you do? And it was amazing because they taped during the week, and they aired Friday night, so Shabbat wasn't a problem. And that's how I started off in journalism.
What a story of luck and persistence. You always hear about those people that like still show up to the university, to get a spot, or still show up to the job and try to compel somebody. That takes some chutzpah.
Thank you. As long as you do it with a smile, I feel like maybe it's kosher.
Yeah, no, I love that. I want to learn a little bit more about your life as a journalist and a media personality since October 7th. You've been on air a lot, and you've also helped dozens of others to get on air. What has your experience been like, and what have you learned?
Wow. Okay. So
It's a loaded question, yeah.
But it's a great question. It's actually a great lawyer question when they pile on the questions. There's multiple facets to this. So I will also back it up to the beginning of my career. So at ABC News, it was my second or third week on the job. It was going to be Yom Kippur. And I had told them I'm leaving a bit early. There was no problem. This girl came over to me, and she was hovering over my head to the point where I felt her breath next to me. And I said to her, Mandy, what are you doing? And she looked at me, and she goes, can I ask a question? I said, mm-hmm. She goes, can I ask, how do you hide your horns so well? Now, I went to Jewish day school my whole life, so I'm not really exposed to that before. I knew it was something negative, but I sincerely looked at her. I said, Mandy, where are you from? And she looked at me and goes, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Why? I said, well, Mandy, in Lancaster, do humans have horns? And she looked at me and said, no. Oh, I get it. You don't have horns either. I said, no. But little did she know, this is now ABC News on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. There's quite a few Jews who work there, especially live there, all of that, and is surrounded in the newsroom by Jews. But because I was leaving early for Yom Kippur, she had never been exposed to that. So why am I sharing this story? I'm so pleased this happened early on because she was not biased. She was severely misinformed and had thought that that was her truth. So why do I share this story? Because it taught me very early on that people don't know everything. And until you are that one to say, this is the story, don't assume they should know, because I promise you, even if they know about the story, they don't know the way you're going to deliver it. So it's with that theme, I now can answer your question, which is it helped me to learn never to assume and always get in contact with everyone to tell the story, to make sure they understand it, and maybe they'll do something about it, have you on TV, have that next person, next expert on. But if you don't pick up the phone, they will never know what the real story was from your perspective that is supposedly the truth. So don't be afraid to lift up that phone. And that's what set me on my path as well as a journalist. Now, you ask about October 7th, but the truth is, my work started long before October 7th. I felt this need. I used to work at ABC, CBS, CNN, CNBC, and Bloomberg, and not all at the same time. Contributing, learning, all different facets. Fast forward, I then went to work at the Federation as a director of JCRC in northern New Jersey for 5 years, simultaneously teaching a course, How to Combat Anti-Semitism. And let me tell you, I learned more from the students than I learned from me. And what do I mean by that? It set me on this path where students started asking me, Ariella, why is media ignoring us? You used to work there. And then community members, Ariella, why is media ignoring us? And I kept looking at them saying, well, are you telling them what you're thinking? To which they would always say to me, no. So there's two folds to that. The real question is, why is media failing us? That's the next question I get. But the real question is, they're not. We're failing them in the sense it's not bias all the time. That's a small percent. There's misinformed people who don't realize where one place sits on the map next to the other. Should they know? Yes, but they don't. So take the time, again, to inform. So now, October 7th, right before, let's say there was an earthquake somewhere, okay? The networks would call me and say, who do you have on the ground? I don't personally have anyone on the ground, but I always referred United Hatzalah, Israel, and they would go on camera as representatives of the Israeli state and explain. Then I realized what the need was to send journalists to Israel. And that's what I was working on so diligently, to ensure that these people who are reporting in the news within medical and tech should go to Israel. Why? Because Israel is more than a war-torn country, which is what many assume it just is. Now you're going to say, well, how was that trip? Unfortunately, it didn't happen because that trip was supposed to take place October 10th, 2023. But what did happen is a whole nother story, which makes me know that I'm in the right line of work because what I'm about to tell you. Now, October 7th happened, and I will never forget where I was when my husband looked at me and said, Ariella, you're going to be working today. Now, I'm Shomer Shabbat. I keep Shabbat. He's the doctor, not me. Why would I be working today? And he read a piece of the news to me. And I said, oh, Joel, stuff is always happening in Israel. What do you mean? I went to hear the rabbi speak in shul in synagogue. And after 2 minutes, I realized, oh, boy, we have a problem. I ran back to my house. I set up shop with 8 computer screens and into all the different newsrooms from BBC, ABC, MSNBC, CNBC, helping in any which way I could to navigate the crisis that which I also didn't know. Now, October 7th, 3 major things happened that set me on the path of where I am now as well. Number 1, I got in touch with somebody named Yoni Asher. I still to this day don't remember how I got his number, but I wanted to make sure that he saw the video of his family being kidnapped. I didn't know if he had it. So I got on the phone with him, and after speaking to Yoni Asher for 1 hour, I said, Yoni, I have zero idea how I can help you, but I want you to know I'm here. And he kind of chuckles and goes, Ariella, didn't you just tell me you do media? I said, why? He goes, well, can't I do that? And I said, that's a good idea. So without further ado, October 8th, put him on ABC News. I made a photo collage of his family. On the top corner, I wrote photo credit via Ariella Novak. For one reason, if somebody needed me, they would find me. And that they did. And this became how the hostage families and the families that had members taken hostage went on TV. One family after the next, after the next. This is the story that people I don't think really know or never thought about. How did they get on camera?
Like who gets them on the air?
Yeah, like how did that trend, if you want to call, happen? That's how. Now, the next big part of the story that happened, I got a call from a girl that goes to Cooper Union. And she goes, Ariella, I don't know if you remember me, but right now, we just locked ourselves in the library here. They're coming for us. They're coming for us Jewish students. Can you help me? Now, I first froze and said, can I help you? Are you okay, safe? And she says, yeah, we're safe, but what do we do? I need your media help. And that's when this whole role of teaching how to be in media, how to use your voice, what is on record, what is off record, how to have a conversation with the journalist, when not to have a conversation. And it all stemmed from this one girl calling me from when she locked herself in the Cooper Union Library, confused, distorted, didn't know what to do. And then it became the next student that called me, and the next. And then it became producers saying, Ariella, do you know any students who are on this campus? And then students saying, producers are calling, writers are calling, what do we do? And that's what pushed us to create something called Shield Fellowship, which allowed for students to be trained in real time. Because as we know, there's all these wonderful organizations out there that have these wonderful conferences all the time. But what I feel is lacking is a continuity between conference to conference, where if, let's say, you get all this great information at a conference, then you go home. So how do you activate? That's where we come in. So we created all of these different WhatsApp groups just by accident. One student would say, can we add our other friends? Can we add our, and now we have over 19 to, actually I think it's 29 different WhatsApp groups from different campuses across the United States, which is pretty cool. So that any day we can wake up and say, oh, I didn't know this happened on your campus. Now let me connect you with this producer who might be interested. Because until there's 0 people watching TV, it is impactful. Because that is where politicians are getting their information. It's an important thing to note. So I don't care if you're watching Fox News, CNN, and guess what? You're getting your news from social media. It stems from somewhere. And it's usually not just stemming from social media. It's stemming from something you've seen cut, edited from mainstream media. So that's the impact of media and the importance of it. And I think it's really important to invest in these young voices, because if we don't highlight them and if their stories don't come to the forefront, how do we advocate? How do we combat that anti-Semitism if we too don't know about it? And then the third big part of the story is, and he's a big part of my life now, we met at an event many years back before October 7th. His name is Jonathan Conricus. He is the former IDF spokesperson, and wears so many other hats as well. We were friends before October 7th. And October 7th, I texted him, if you need anything or if anyone, I'm here to help. And let me tell you, our teamwork really came together so that we could help amplify and communicate and say exactly what needs to be said across the mainstream media. Now, Israel wasn't waiting for this moment to happen. They had no idea October 7th would. So it's not like you can be prepared with spreadsheets. Okay, so now something today is going to happen. Here's all the media. No, but thank God that's something I did know. They had the facts. I had contacts. And I just wanted to make sure accuracy was had. So I'll never forget this one moment on TV where one of the anchors on CNN was saying something. And I kept saying, if I don't know that, if the IDF doesn't know that, how do you on TV know that? Then I realized right away, she doesn't. So I quickly got a statement from the IDF, and within 2 minutes, I think it was, gave it to the producer. Producer gave it to this anchor on CNN. And within 5 minutes, I was sweating bullets. She read it back on air saying, oh, it's more propaganda. Propaganda is the following, blah, blah, blah. And I kept going, phew. But that wasn't a one-off, you see. It happened over and over again. Another, I wouldn't say fun fact, but interesting fact to know. If you've ever watched CNN, and I'll say this network in particular, they've never shown a video that was released from Hamas, from the hostages that were held there in Gaza. And it's not a coincidence. Each time the videos were released from Hamas, I would text as many producers that I know and say, hey, just to let you know, this video came out from Hamas. Please don't show it. Propaganda is the following. Thank you so much. And they would be so receptive, which is kind of shocking to a lot of people, but not to me. and receptive in the way of saying, thank you for the reminder. We won't. So when people have this image of what these news networks are, they're all bad. Think of a Shabbat table. Not everyone at the table is going to share your thoughts and your favorite food, right? Not everyone can have the same opinion. And you have to think of CNN, MSNBC, Fox, as a place that not everyone's going to share the same opinion. And I think that people have been brainwashed to think or don't realize that they're all different thinkers in a place. Now, I just want to also say, I am aware there is bias. Now, there's bias in someone's heart, like there was that girl, Mandy, that I mentioned earlier, that didn't know that I don't have horns. And then there's people that are reporting from, Gazans, for example, that are on the ground in Gaza, that are paid people from Hamas. Those are problematic individuals. And those are people that are spreading thoughts, I would say, to the CNN people or to any network, but there's no way to verify it in real time. And that's how communication kind of gets lost. So what I've learned from this is, number one, what's missing is the opportunity for people to learn how to amplify their voice in a safe way that is helpful to our community. That's one. And two is a big initiative that we push out here is we launched out of necessity, I promise you, it's not in my spare time. Out of necessity, we launched a sort of birthright for journalists. Now, what is that? It's exactly what it sounds like. We have a wait list of over 33 journalists that work at the major news networks, not influencers, people of influence who are rather writing the scripts, the people behind the camera and also on camera, who want to learn more in an off-record way, which means not in a way that's wearing a t-shirt of an organ. They want to be there for themselves so they can do a better job within their newsroom. It changes their outlook. So I was so pleased about October 7th, over a year ago, we brought our first delegation. And it did exactly what it needed to do. The reporters that came said it changed their life. It changed their way of accessing, firstly, the right experts. It changed the way of what the grounds looked like, and it changed the way they thought Israel functions, which, did you know, one of the people that came with me said to me, Ariella, I really thought after October 7th, Israel kicked out all the Muslims in Israel. And now I see them working here in the hospitals. I'm truly shocked. And I looked, I said,
But this is what I don't understand. So you gave the analogy that, the newsroom or a media company is like a Shabbat table. At a Shabbat table, you can have different opinions, and you're entitled to that. But in the newsroom, you're not reporting on opinions. You're reporting on, supposedly, facts. So how is it that the approach to media is, we're going to get it wrong unless someone comes in and tells us how to get it right? Like, I feel like the burden of proof should be a little bit higher. The bar is kind of low.
So here's the back end of that. It's not that it's low. It's really hard to access sometimes the right information. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine reached out to me. This is one example. A friend of mine reached out to me and said, Ariella, here's an article. This news platform is always making us look bad. I took a look. I took a quick click. And the next thing I know, I see ABC News, according to Reuters. Now, what does that mean? ABC News did not do any research. They published the newswire, which is a newswire is something that pops up on your screen. Reuters has it, AP has it. It's very common. But the big problem is they don't always know the facts right away. So it said 3 militants were killed, but really it was 10 kids murdered on a soccer field. So what went wrong here? Well, I'll tell you. ABC News took the wire and published it. And then if you look back at the AP News site or Reuters site right away, you'll see within 10 minutes they updated it to change it. Now, that's something that the news network did not do. They did not look to see if they've updated it or changed it. So that's a big problem. When I often get the question, Ariella, how do you read news? Which channel do you watch? All of them. Because you know why? You have to learn how to read the news yourself. So that's one thing I always check, is how to read it, which is, did they do their own reporting? Then another friendly tip I'll tell you, if you look in the center of the news article, a lot of the times it says, X news organization cannot independently verify the following from here or here. And that is another way of knowing they've buried the truth, in that case, to say what you're saying, in the sense where they knew it was unverified. And the example that I have in my head right now, there was a news article that came out from CNN that said, I'm sure you remember this one, 30,000 Gazans killed.
Yeah, why are they not embarrassed to report on things that are unverifiable is what I don't understand.
So I'll tell you. So they came out with somebody that he's a stringer. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a stringer, but maybe people in the audience don't know. A stringer could be a 2-year-old eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It could be a taxi driver. It could be nobody.
So it's like an alleged comment, somebody who comments on their own experience?
Yep, and or just makes things up. And in this case, there's somebody, Muhammad al-Swahili, He's a quote-unquote stringer for CNN, according to online, as well as, if you Google his name again, Mohammed al-Swahili, it will say, ready for this, Hamas Noor news agency videographer. You can be one, you can be the other, but you can't be both. And he's the one, the lone voice, because remember, people couldn't come in and out of Gaza, the lone voice in Gaza, bylined, which means written, underneath Jeremy Diamond's name on most things coming out of Gaza. So when you ask, how did these headlines come out of there? Mohammed al-Swahili, who is supposedly a stringer, but also Hamas Noor news agency videographer, is the one that's verifying these facts that President Biden at the time then referred to in one of his speeches. That's scary.
Is there no accountability? Is there no code? Is there no code of conduct for these media groups?
So because he's not a hire, otherwise it would say freelance, then news agencies would be in trouble, but he's not. And that's how these people get away with it.
So that's a loophole. Okay.
Yep. And it's a big problem.
And that's what requires media literacy, because then it puts the burden on you, the receiver, to be discerning about what you're consuming, which is not happening for the average news reader. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's frustrating.
It is frustrating, let me tell you.
So then, related to that, what do you make of all the citizen journalists? There's a big culture, especially on YouTube, on social media. I know we started talking about legacy media, which is television, but you're also very involved with social media and getting people on different lives and talks and podcasts, et cetera. So what do you make of the citizen journalists?
Funny. So I just listened to Biana, who's a voice on CNN, and she literally just answered this very similar question as well. And they asked her, how do you feel about the people that are now going into social media and
reporting? Nate Friedman.
Right. And she said, well, it works both ways. We find it extremely helpful because that way we have video from real time, knowing what's happening. And are they journalists? We don't know. But it is factual, these videos, and it's so good that we can now use this in real time to publish some news that we may not have known about if it wasn't for social media. So whether we call them journalists or, media makers, whatever you want to call them, it is an imperative part of where we are in the world now, where anything can become news because people take out their phones and have a camera, and there you have it. At the same time, it's a very dangerous tool to have because somebody reporting something that looks like something, but it's not, can be equally as damaging. So there was a student actually that reached out to me that said her mezuzah is missing, someone stole it, it's anti-Semitism, and she was going after her neighbor. But the truth is it was just lost with the doorman downstairs. So the point is we have to do our due, and she made this whole video and posted on social media, and it could spread like this. And she didn't mean it in harm. But my point is you have the power to change the world with your phone and video making to get something to go viral. You have to make sure your facts are correct on both sides so that you can ensure that you're spreading the truth, and that way action has happened. So I said to this girl, that's not what happened. She goes, but I really didn't think that somebody would, I didn't think it could fall down. So it's the smallest thing that I understand where you're coming from, but I think it's very important now that we use the way social media should be used, which is to verify it. Make sure, reach out to that person. If it's something that you're looking to do a news story on, you see something that happens, don't just repost it. Reach out and say, hey, I just want to confirm this is what happened, right? Even if something is so obvious, the person can say, yeah, but also it's not my footage, my friend gave it to me. Well, then you actually weren't there. That maybe is not a viable story. So there's all these little tidbits to verifying the news, but it is so important that we utilize these new kind of up-and-coming journalists to be able to share stories over.
In addition to the Birthright for journalists, you also built a product that's like an AI verification tool for journalists to verify pieces of news that they see. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So right now it's in demo mode. It's on bottomlinemedia.org. The idea actually came out of that story that I shared before when I was talking to the news producer to say, hey, you got that headline wrong. He checked it out on ChatGPT. And he's like, these answers are too long. They're not, the best. I wish we had our own factual ChatGPT where we can verify these newswires. Wouldn't that be great? And I said, yes, I have to go. Can you just change the headline? I have an idea. Hung up the phone. I called a friend in tech. And that's where this idea of Bottom Line Bot was born. So what does it do? You can ask it a question in real time. And just like, ChatGPT, it looks the same. It will give you an answer, except theirs is very, very long, like a grocery receipt. Ours is extremely short to the point. And the best part is, if our AI doesn't know the answer in real time, it'll ping an expert to be able to answer your query in real time. Of course, like I said, it's in demo mode now. We have tested in the newsrooms. And the best feedback we got was from one person at the major networks, where she said she usually only edits and sends out 3 news articles, publishes 3 pieces a week. Because of this tool, she was able to publish 8 factual articles that week. So not only is it keeping her accurate, it actually made her faster. So let me tell you, they are going to want to use it. We need to invest in this. And that someone said, why don't you make them pay for it? Yeah, okay. That's not how it's going to work. We have to offer it as a tool that can be there to help them. Now, another question I always get is, will someone think it's biased because, you and Jonathan Conricus are behind it? No, and it's a silly question. It's not bias. It's not opinion. It's not our voices, actually. It's reporting. You're giving it questions in real time, and it's giving you answers with cited and sourced information that you're welcome to go check out somewhere else. So the fact that people say journalists can't change, there's nothing we can do, that's because we haven't done everything. And when people say, journalism is failing us, no, we're failing them. And also, what's the definition of failure? Doing something over and over in different ways and still failing. Well, I'm here to tell you, we haven't failed yet, which is why I'm still so optimistic about it. We haven't failed because we haven't done enough to say, gosh, we've tried everything. So this app was specifically created for anybody who wants to know and have access to the truth in real time. And that's the idea of it.
I'm excited to see how this concept in general is just more widely adopted in society. It almost seems like the more access to knowledge we have, the more relative truth becomes. And there's going to be an odd, weird, ugly duckling phase where it's not clear, what's verifiable, what's true, until we can start to authenticate fact. And AI and even cryptocurrency can help with that, because if you can set a token that says that anything that's tokenized is authenticated, then you're only working off information that has met a certain threshold of accuracy, for example. And this is something that we have in advertising. Certain pieces of data are more reliable than others. So if there's a way to authenticate certain pieces of media, then when you see it that it meets a certain criteria, and the other pieces of media are not as believable.
And the funniest part, I saw, maybe it's about a year ago, BBC came out with something called BBC Verified. I think that's what it's called. Don't quote me. The name of it is just ridiculous. BBC Verified, really? Who's using this? And what they did is they started taking AI, and the first video they used was of President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Who is this verifiable? Is this accurate photo? But it wasn't, you see? But instead, people didn't read the headline. They just saw the video that was created by AI to show their point of they're creating a network of BBC Verified. But people didn't read that this was a made-up video. Instead, they published, it looked like news, that this news event was happening that didn't, because people don't read. So it could be so dangerous as well if people are putting out inaccurate things, even though that wasn't their goal. So I always say caution on everything you read, everything you see, and also never repost something on social media that you haven't fully watched. And I'll give an example. I watched somebody speaking at the Emmys and giving a speech, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Then I heard the last sentence, and I'm like, whoa, they're allowed to say that? But if I didn't listen to the whole thing, I would have reposted it, and people would have been either giving me slack or not listening to the whole thing also, and reposting it. And I'd be just as accountable as the next person who's spreading inaccuracies. So always make sure to be thorough.
There's another component of this that's really popular in Jewish influencer culture. Mm-hmm. You coach a lot of Jewish personalities and influencers on how to speak on the news or in media appearances. What do you think is most effective in changing people's minds and compelling them to see truth your way?
So I focus less on how to see the truth, rather how to present the truth.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So for example, there was this girl, Yola Ashkenazi, who was going on Fox News because my dad gave me a call. He's like, Ariella, nobody's reporting on the college campus of Columbia where your sister used to have lunch, and now all these green tents are there. You should go out there and do something. I'm like, okay. He's like, go take that picture. So I did. And I wrote poison ivy, and I disseminated it with all the green tents on it. It's a long photo, and I disseminated it to all the news networks. And then Yola Ashkenazi, a student at Barnard/Columbia, is there, and she's going on Fox News the next day, and she goes, Ariel, what should I talk about? And I said, here's our plan. So she gets onto air, and the anchor asks her whatever question. She didn't even need to listen to it. She goes, that's a great question, but what I want to know is, and she started talking all about the green tents on her college campus and how it made her feel. And by the way, I believe your producer also has this photo, poison ivy, of all these tents on the campus. She painted her own story. So it's knowing the art of storytelling. Now, I also recognize not everyone can do that on air, and not everyone needs to. There's other forms of journalism, which is creating content on your own social media platform. Or maybe you are a very good writer, but you don't know how to publish. Don't worry. That's why we're here for that too. So we take the art of storytelling, not just on camera, but onto podcasts, onto spaces of a reporter now is sitting with you and you look angry. So now you know what you're going to be known as? The disgruntled student from X university. Really? Yes, you will be. And that will be your new title that your friends call you that I promise you're not going to want. So you have, every word matters. And as Jonathan Conricus used to say to me, we have a good laugh about this, define what is on record versus off record. Depends how good the news is. And that's something I take to heart, and it's true. So don't assume because you've said, oh, by the way, this is off record, which means the person shouldn't be using that news. If it's really juicy, they will. So just don't tell anyone. That's my best advice in the world of nobody should know, then don't tell. But it's a serious thing where you have to know how to present yourself. You have to know how to present the facts. I learned from an early stage that I always speak, I think, I feel, I know. Therefore, it's
speak from the I.
Speak from the I always say that. I just did it now. And then also knowing when not to talk, when to let the other person finish their sentence, when you can realize they're not listening to me. Guess what? They are listening. They're just not agreeing. But that's okay. They don't have to agree with you. You have to learn also how to intake their information because they may have a point. It doesn't mean you agree, but they may have a point that you're like, oh, let me examine my facts to see how I can spit that back to make it make sense for them. So it's about being a very good listener. I always say that as well. And the most important thing is, let's say you've said something incorrect. You quoted the wrong person, you said something wrong, whatever. It was completely unintentional. Now what? You're off air, your article came out. Feel free to always message that producer, that journalist, that person to say, by the way, I just want to let you know, it's not this, it's that. Therefore, it clears you of any fault, but at the same time, you're giving them the facts now, and so that they can choose how to handle the situation. So there's no way not to walk something back. You can always walk something back, make it timely, of course. But these are things people are very nervous about that I noticed. And the other thing that I always see is people are nervous that somebody's not going to hear them, or they're going to cut their interview into different pieces. Worry about that later. Take the interview and then say, I would like to see it. Make them your friend. They want to get it right also because they don't want to get in trouble. So journalists are not, it's a word, just they're people that are asking you questions. Just you have to know how to answer them.
This is something that I struggle with, and it's interesting. Yeah, because I'll explain. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows about this podcast that I'll bring people on that I personally disagree with, who have views that I don't uphold or support. My goal is for my guests to tell me their story. Whether I agree with it or not is almost kind of irrelevant. I'm having the conversations that I think are interesting to me and my listener. And that part's all kosher. But I find that sometimes the people that follow me on social media, especially when I cut it down into short clips where they see something inflammatory, they're like, how dare you platform this person? Or, you took this clip and that's the only context we have and people are going to see it and draw conclusions.
What would be a question that somebody had on that?
Oh, I'll tell you. So when I had Shabbos Kestenbaum on a month ago, he talked about the scandal that FIDF was in. And he did it in a very entertaining, fiery way, which made for a perfect clip. I clipped 40 seconds of all he said in a 45-minute conversation, 40 seconds. And I put it on Instagram. And of course, it went viral because it was an inflammatory clip. I knew exactly what I was doing. There we go. And so, of course, everybody's like, how dare you? You only showed, the bad of the FIDF, and it's not fully indicative of the reality, and you're just hurting the soldiers. And in some sense, I understand what they're saying, but in another sense, lucky for us, we are all gifted with a brain, and we can go and find our own information and draw our own conclusions. Just because you're hearing somebody say something inflammatory doesn't mean you are compelled and nobody's preaching to you. No one's encouraging you to agree. And sometimes I feel like everyone thinks social media is about persuading. I'm not trying to persuade you of anything. If you saw that clip and you disagree...
That's because you're a good journalist.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Really?
But I don't even... Am I a journalist?
I think so. You're listening. You're telling stories. In a way that's not your stories. You're allowing the other person to answer the questions fully.
But I don't always fact check them.
But in this sense, this is a podcast. It's different. This is meant for conversation. This is not meant for breaking news, although we can. But this is not meant for breaking news, right? This is a conversation where you're asking and probing different kind of questions that people would never have thought about perhaps or never have known answers to if you were
Or
the
don't
one
feel
asking.
comfortable asking. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
By the way, I'm still very comfortable, so maybe you can get deeper here.
And I'll cut it into a nice clip. Yeah, so it's something that I wrestle with. And then you look at people like Joe Rogan, a great example of somebody who gets criticism for that. And does Joe Rogan have a duty to bring on people from all sides and to bring on people that represent all viewpoints? I would argue no. But he also doesn't claim that he's in the business of sharing the truth and nothing but the truth. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's like going on Zateo, who, for those of you who don't know, there's someone named Mehdi Hassan.
Yeah, great
honestly
example.
Is vile to me, and to many, I should say. And he created something called Zateo, which on his website, I'm not encouraging you to go there, but on his website, he created a platform, and it says the following. Here at Zateo, we're here to answer all your questions while striving to tell the truth.
Striving.
Now, what kind
A
of
for
journalism
effort.
is that? No, he gets no letters. What kind of, and honestly, though, I'm not giving him any credit. He's the one that, not him, but the platform, propelled me and propelled us, Jonathan and myself, to launch Bottom Line Media. And also together with Bethany Mandel, we do other things within PR together at the storytelling as well. But he's the reason, I fault him. Because he took action, created Zateo a year and a half ago, which was working to tell the truth openly. That doesn't work for me. So when I saw that, and they had tabs at the time called like Israel's fault and Israel's faulting, and I mean any words of Israel is bad, without telling the story. So he painted a picture without even letting the viewer read it. I mean, he has a goal, and I get it. So it's not something I agree with him on. But again, it goes back to your point about journalism. Number one, he strives to tell the truth. Number two is he's giving you opinion over letting the reader or the person listening absorb and create their own opinion. That's not his goal. His goal is to share his thoughts to his people or people who want to know more about his cult movement, as I call it. And it's a huge problem. So when someone says they're striving to tell the truth, how do you get away with that? So don't worry, you're a great journalist.
Thanks. I don't consider myself a journalist, but I do consider myself, I guess, a storyteller, which is a little bit different. I expect a lot out of journalism. I expect a true, sincere desire to find the truth as opposed to tell a story, which are different, which is why I would not consider myself a journalist.
But I must tell you, most journalists are the exact way you're describing. What's news, right? News travels fast if there's something really bad, right? Then it's breaking news. It's not as often, I would say, that something really exciting is going to break news, right? I mean, there's those key moments when the hostages were coming out and, all those things, which broke news in the best way possible. But it's much easier to break news through hardship than happiness. So I would say the same thing applies in journalism. It's much easier to find those stories that have the bias in them. Like for example, when they said there was a hostage exchange or a prisoner exchange, right? Mm-hmm. No, there wasn't. There's hostages exchanged for prisoners and vice versa.
They're not equal.
They're not equal. But and different organizations said, look what you're doing. This network is biased. This person is biased. I'm going to even go on the record and say, I think 100% of the people who did that were not trying to be biased. They literally are on a timeline, on a time crunch. This is not a story that speaks to them, perhaps. So a detail is just another word. And they would be happy for you to reach out to say, hey, I think that, it is this, not this. Can you change it, please? Now. You can even be, very blunt. It's fine. But the person who did that wasn't being, I don't think, anti-Semitic. They really just
the outcome is the
same,
though. The damage is done. So the flip side of that is like, that's great that to them it's just a detail in there on a time crunch, but they're actually in a position of responsibility and there's accountability for that.
But that's why I reach out to these journalists.
Yeah. And it just might be too late.
Right away. No, I mean, in a sense for like this, the fact is they are willing to, change the headline, change that blunder. I'm not giving them a free pass, please. But the point is they didn't realize they made an error. That's on us. We must keep pushing back. But instead of screaming, you're biased, you're this, and it not reaching them, that's my problem.
Yeah, then we're not facilitating any change.
No, we're just saying, look, network, you did this, you should be accountable, but it's not reaching anyone. So it's almost like, I have children, and it's almost like my son asking me for water 95 times, but like without a cup and without the water in his hands, I'm happy to pour it for him. And it's the same thing over and over again. We're not knocking on the door of the person who's making the blunder. Now, let's say you do, and they ignore you. Or let's say they say, I'm not helping you. Or I'll never forget, there's someone from New York Times that reached out because they wrote a headline that was wrong. And it was actually this kind of topic. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know what, thank you. I never thought of it that way. I'm not changing it this time, but now I know I can use you as a source. I said, sure. So am I going to win 100% of the time? No, I'd be lying if I said I did. But it opens doors to the next conversation where they're going to do better. So is the system that I'm sharing with you perfect? No, and I wish there was a perfect way. But if we're not being proactive in a polite manner a lot of the times, we're not going to have change. Now, you can also say to me, Ariella, what about those other ones like that you see and they're so anti-Semitic? You're right. And I haven't reached out to those people because they're not interested. So do I have many friends at Al Jazeera? No. Am I searching for many friends? No. Could there still be good people that are working there? Maybe. But the point is, we can't assume everybody is bad. We can't assume that they're doing a mistake on purpose. Take the time to educate them. Help them do something good. You don't know what the outcome will be.
This goes back to the Jewish thing of like, I'm going to butcher the phrase, but it's like, you don't have to do all the work, but you're not free from not doing some of the work.
Yes.
What's
that is a phrase.
Yes.
Actually, I just read that, but there's
the work cannot cease or something like that.
There's a Hebrew quote on it.
Yep.
And it's true. And it's our responsibility, completely. And of course, this other person can still falter, right? But we have to try before we say they're all not listening. Who's they all? Define that. You can't. So I think it's very important for us to be proactive instead of just reactive.
As you look back on the last 2 years, 2.5 years now, lightning round question for you. What's a win and what's a do-over you want to have? What's a win you had and what's a do-over you'd like to have if you could?
A win, I would say, being able to highlight as many of the hostage family stories that we've done. It will start off as just something that Bethany Mandel, who I work with, love her. Literally yin to my yang, has the other half of my brain in terms of functioning in media. I'll never forget this. There was someone named Sasha. He was being held hostage, and so was his girlfriend. I know he said lightning, but so was his girlfriend, now fiance, and soon to get married. And so was his mom, also being held hostage.
Yeah, and a grandmother, I believe.
So what happened was we realized nobody's speaking on his behalf. So Bethany created this article within one of the papers that was titled, Amazon Employee Being Held by Hamas. Now that made headline news. I then quickly took that article to a couple of producers. Oh my God, why haven't we had this covered? And I explained, they go, well, then who's going to speak on their behalf? And that's where we came in. Time after time after time, bringing these stories to the forefront so that President Trump could do what he needed to. Media can do what they needed to. Elected officials can do what they need to learn these stories, to read these stories. They would never have known them if it wasn't for media. So that's something I wouldn't say I'm so glad I could have had a hand in some story of this. And the other part I'll say to that, a few weeks ago I read an article, I think it was on the Jerusalem Post, and it made me cry. And I haven't cried really about this in 2 years. And cry happiness. Why? I read an article that said it was Guy Gilboa Dalal and there was Gal Gilboa Dalal. Gal was fighting for Guy, his brother. Mm-hmm. And Gal and I got to know each other. His twin was taken at the Nova Festival. And we did so much media together, especially over the Washington rally, if you remember 2 years ago. And I did all the media for that. There was a huge showing. And we walked from station to station just doing media. And I read this article a few weeks ago that said the following. My brother stayed alive because he got medical attention when he got out, and because seeing and hearing from his brother under the tunnels kept him alive because of his advocacy on TV. I promise you, when I was doing this, I never considered anything that media can keep people alive underground. I only thought it would keep hopes up here. And that was a moment that truly touched me. So, and then I would also add, now you said the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's something you can do over? I mean, so much of this, right? The way things are fact-checked, how long it takes to verify things.
And you're very hasty. So I can see that your hastiness can sometimes get in the way of what you really want to do. You are speedy.
I also not afraid to ask questions, you see. What would I do over again? There's no do-over. I don't believe in do-overs. What can we all as a people, rather, if I can say, do better? Invest in journalism and allow us to take journalists to Israel so that the stories that we're not reading about in news make the news.
And I think invest in logical reasoning for the average Jew right now so that they can speak in a way that's compelling and they can process information in a way that's compelling. The language of you all or this vague blanket statements that we use, the media, like who are you talking about? Be specific.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not about the fundraising. It's not about each organization's gala, and they're all important for different reasons. It's about helping the state of Israel. And how do we do that? By being the best advocates that we can around the globe. And I have so many contacts now in Australia, so many contacts in Brazil, even in India. I thought it was a fake number, but it's not. People all willing to listen, to learn. And guess what? They're not even Jewish, a lot of the ones that I'm speaking to. In fact, I was at a dinner last night, and I brought with me 8 journalists who were fighting to come to the dinner to learn about this organization. Now you're going to tell me, Ariella, that's a fluke. It's not. There are people that are so enticed. It's not just the free food. They're enticed to learn about the organization. And I think that's so important. Yes, the food was good, but again, they were there to support and to learn about what this organization was, that maybe some people say is controversial, some not. Invest in teaching, invest in sharing, and also invest in knowing that you're not going to win. And what do I mean by win? The person's not going to feed back your information each time. But guess what? They can't unhear you. And I want everyone to remember that.
Yeah, that's a very powerful message. And it reminds me, the man who owns the studio that we're in right now, he has a very popular Substack, and he had written an article that was like, a lot of my mentees ask me if law school is still worth it. Is it or is it not? And I think at the time he had said it's like marginally worth it because the cost of the education and the debt you get into, it's like very hard to make it back, and it's long hours, like you really have to like the work. But I think overall he had argued that it is, still beneficial. I actually believe that any law class is highly beneficial, and here's why. When people study media or journalism, they pick every word surgically. And so they're very specific about what they mean.
Mm-hmm. It's intentional.
Right. And what a lawyer does is basically the same skill, but then there's another framework of it, of when we see something, the first thing we think is, but is this reasonable, right? Would a reasonable person look at this situation and draw the same conclusion? And a lot of law and precedent is based on the reasonable person standard, right?
Yep.
And I feel that when we disagree on the internet, a lot of times people come out, well, one might think that so-and-so or such and such, and it's like, okay, but it doesn't matter what one might think. It matters what a reasonable person might think. So all of these judgments and concepts of debate, the average person needs to learn in order to be able to defend their position. And social media has opened us up to this discourse, but it hasn't given us the skill to learn how to have the discourse effectively.
I'll also tell you a secret. You mentioned journalism school. Again, I'm not counting on numbers here, but I don't think most journalists have gone to journalism school. And it's not something that's a criteria.
What do they get, like a writing degree?
I didn't go to journalism school.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. You were a chef.
I have a business degree from Stern Business.
Okay.
But I took business classes and and some communications classes, and then I found my voice, literally. But I think it's imperative to realize not everybody went to this schooling, and even people who go to the schooling, they pick and choose what they want to know, just like anywhere else, right? So I think that's very important to note as well. And just like a good lawyer, they can ask a question with like 6 questions inside of it. You're doing the same thing.
Sometimes I try not to, but sometimes I do.
And that's okay. But the point is, in journalism, the same thing, just like you said, occurs. And somebody can ask a loop question, we call it, where it starts with one thought, ends in a completely different thought. So your answer is going to the whole question, but that's not really what you meant, and then things get misconstrued. So it's knowing, for example, I was on a news network, and someone said to me, and Ariella, and you were there today, and you witnessed this, and then you went here, and I'm thinking in my head, no, I didn't, and I never told anyone that. Who told them that? And I'm on live television, so I'm not going to say, oh, thank you so much for having me, and no, I didn't do any of that today. It's knowing how to talk. So what I said rather was, thank you so much for having me here today, and oh, yes, I also listened in on the following, and when I heard about this, so it's knowing not to correct, but how to not spin,
pivot.
But how to pivot so you can answer their question in a way that is truthful and nice in the way that's answering their question, but all in a style that's with accuracy. And yes, I did hear the speech, but I wasn't where they said I was. I don't know who told them I was, But it wasn't done also in bias, where they told them, these are things that people all assume, right? Oh, they must have said this because it must be anti-Semitic. No, they just got their facts wrong. So I'm here to say, let me help you out without calling you out. And that's what I did.
I had to learn an adjacent lesson the hard way. I don't know if you know this story, but very shortly after October 7th, I got myself on a NewsNation segment to talk about the upcoming presidential election at the time.
Okay.
And the way that I found this opportunity was I had released a podcast episode with a famous influencer, Talia Lickstein. I guess one of her followers listened to it, and she's a reporter for NewsNation. She DM'd me on my podcast account and was like, hey, do you know any young voters who want to talk about how they feel as Jews in the upcoming presidential election? And I said, well, actually, I am myself a young voter. So she's like, okay, we'll bring you on. There's going to be a couple of other folks on the line with you. Yep. What she did was set me up for a debate with an anti-Zionist Jew. She said there are going to be a couple of other young people that are going to weigh in. That's not what happened. It was me with my Israeli flag in the background, and then this guy who's an anti-Zionist PhD student. And this is what I had to learn the hard way. It was a big lesson for me. At the beginning, you talked about the girl from Colombia when she was asked a question, how she totally spun it in a different way, and she delivered the message that she wanted to deliver, irrespective of what the question was.
Correct.
That is what I should have done, and that is not what I did, because when they asked me, what do you think, how do you think Biden has handled the anti-Semitism on campus? And
my answer would have been, by the way, it's not about how he has handled it, it's about what the outlook is now. And that's how I would have answered
And that's not what I said. You know what I said? I said, I looked at them and I said, well, I'm curious to know why you're asking me what the president of the United States has to do with anti-Semitism on campus. Certainly you should look at the administration of the campuses.
But that's what they were looking for you to answer, though, too.
Really?
Yes.
Because I was like, what's the president got to do with this? And every question, I was like, well, that's a stupid question. That's a stupid question. But I could have taken the opportunity to deliver the message that I want to deliver. And this guy who was pinned up against me, he came prepared. He would spin every question into how, what we really should be thinking about is how this
exactly those
influences the genocide, or and throwing in all those buzzwords. So if I may be self-aware and honest, he kind of mopped the floor with me in that segment. And I was still proud that I went on NewsNation, I showed my face and whatever. It was a good PR moment for me. I had just, started the podcast. But damn it, I was so upset.
I know.
And so it was a great learning experience for me. But even more so, what I did after that segment, I messaged that NewsNation producer and I said, can you get me in touch with that guy? I want to interview him on my podcast.
If only everyone operated like you.
Well, thanks. So I ended up being the first Jewish podcast in that time to have an anti-Zionist Jew because of that. Because I was like, you know what? That guy's got something going on. He knows
are you
something.
going to solve who he is as a person? No, but you just opened a conversation, which is the most beautiful thing you can do.
And you know what the reality is? A year and a half later, when I was nominated for the Z3 award and I needed to win the popular vote to be a finalist, I emailed him and I said, hey, Jack, can you vote for me? You know what my podcast is about.
And?
You know that I build bridges. And he said, no problem. I cast my vote. I hope you win.
And by the way, what you just delivered here is exactly the thought process with journalists.
This is what you're preaching.
And it's not about building bridges to other faiths for me. And they happen to be a lot of the time. But it's about building bridges in the same zone that you work in with people with different mindsets or don't know. And you've just changed the impact of his life. I am certain.
Thanks. I hope so. And I know that if I was ever in town where he lives and I, asked him, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? He would, because our relationship, even though we disagree and we met in such contentious circumstances,
absolutely,
it's not built on that at all.
But most people wouldn't have done what you do. So really, that's very commendable.
Well, that's all I had left.
Perfect,
because if you mopped the floor with me on the news, I was like, how do I capitalize on this opportunity?
It's true.
Okay, well, tell me, how can people connect with you on social media and learn more about your work?
Firstly, before I answer that, I just want to say thank you for creating this platform. You have opened up the minds to so many people with such a catchy way, and all of my interactions with you have been so, oh, wow, I also didn't think of that. Thank you for sharing it. So I want to thank you for having this platform.
Thank you.
Firstly, feel free to message me on Instagram, Ariella Novak, very secretive. But the most important thing people can connect with me about is if they want to be investing in journalism, which means either, whether that's a monetary thing or if it's learning how to use your voice, or different students want to know the secret sauce of how to do media, how to elevate their platforms. I'm not just saying this. I really am here to answer questions. I'm thankful for everyone's voices because if they're not speaking, we don't have news. And people like the person you mentioned who was mopping the floors, our floors could be even dirtier if it wasn't for, all the people raising their voices. So the number one thing I would say is feel free to reach out, whether it's something that you're with an organization or and we are a nonprofit. And our goal, by the way, I never shared this with you. The reason I started my nonprofit, you brought up Shabbos Kestenbaum, and there was a few Nova survivors in Shabbos that they're now getting, paid speaking engagements, but they didn't know, how to get there, fly there, and now people are offering, to pay for it, but there's no place to put the money. And specifically Nova survivors too, they're not getting money after they're speaking and they need help. And I said, I don't know how I can help you. So somebody suggested, why don't you open a nonprofit? And I said, you know what? Not a bad idea. So
does that make you a fiscal sponsor then? No?
No. For whom?
For if you're helping some of these speakers get paid through your nonprofit?
So I just let them, put their money through it. And if that could be of help, that was another way I would be happy to help these people, because if they don't use their voice, then what do we have here, right? So that's originally why my nonprofit was founded, which then merged into the fact of, okay, now we're helping all these student voices. How are we going to fly them to go testify? How are we going to, and I had one donor that gave me miles back in the day and said, well, I'll give you these miles, but you have to find someone to match it. I said, oh, okay, no problem. So I quickly went into my miles and I matched it and no problem. So that's how people also, students were getting to Washington, D.C., people don't know, to testify, to help use their voice. So yes, I want to hear from you. Why? Think of me as your politician. If I don't know your story, if I don't know your voice, if I don't know what's happening on the ground, I can't be of help. And so I need you to help me so we can further tell our stories.
And I have one final question for you. It's one that I ask every single guest of the show.
Okay.
Who would you like to nominate for People You Want to Know?
Okay. So there's somebody, I have two answers, if that's kosher.
Perfect.
One is named Maya Bentwich. So I went down south in Israel, and this is a bit of a funny story. Jonathan Conricus tells me you're going to go to Shuva Junction. Shuva Junction's about 10 minutes from one of the kibbutzim down south in Israel. And he said, you're going to go pick up your helmet and vest. He said it very casually. If you know him, you'll go get your helmet and vest. Then you'll continue down to the kibbutz, which is 10 minutes away. Sure. So I arrived there with my, with my little group, with Bethany and two others. And I said to the guy in Hebrew, to the soldier, Slicha, ani tzricha zeh v'zeh. Excuse me, I need this and this, pointing to his helmet and vest. And he looks at me, pauses, and passes me his helmet and his vest. And I look at him, I said, what? No. And in my head, I imagined this was like a bowling alley. You know what size, and they pass it to you. I was completely wrong. But the point being is, I said, no, I don't need your helmet and vest. I am somebody who has emunah v'bitachon, which means belief. I'm good. I don't need that. But it's so nice to meet you. We have a chuckle, and then my phone rings. And it's somebody named Maya Bentwich. I don't know her. The IDF told her to call me so that she knows when I'm near. And she says, hi, Ariella, nice to meet you. You can't come to the kibbutz now. I paused, and I said, excuse me? Why? And I said to her in Hebrew, is there, some action happening? No, I'll call you back when you can. And then the soldier looks at me and goes, in Hebrew, what's the problem? I said, I don't know. He goes, come, yalla, hop into my car. We'll go together. So now this new soldier that I just met, that I did not take his helmet and vest, I just want you all to know. And we hop into his car. We drive 10 minutes down south. We arrive at the gate, and we're walking around for 5 minutes. And this is the 3 months into the war. It's the first time I left my house, basically, because of all the amounts of phone calls I received. I found it irresponsible to leave my house. And we're walking around the kibbutz. And 5 minutes later, I get a call. My phone rings. It's Maya Bentwich, who, again, I don't really know. And my phone rings. Hi, Ariella. Okay, you can come now. I said, oh, thanks so much. I'm already here. Now, imagine the amount of anger in the voice. How did you get in here? I'm the only one who can let you in here. And she comes to find me. Next thing I know, I get a huge tap on my shoulder. Wasn't very friendly. I turn around, and I knew I had to figure this out really fast before I get thrown out of the kibbutz. And I look at her. I'm like, and I introduced myself again. And within a few minutes, we became friends. And she started walking me around this entire kibbutz and telling the stories over of these people who were murdered on October 7th as if they were back alive again. Her storytelling was unmatched in a way where I felt like the people who had passed, who were murdered, were standing next to me. And I looked at her, such innocence. I said, Maya, do you do TV? And she looked at me like I was crazy. And then I go to her, Maya, do you want to write a book about your experiences here? And she looks at me like I was crazier. And I said, okay, listen. When you're done with the IDF, call me. And then when you're ready to do stuff in media, call me again. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. And a year ago, October 7th, we published our first news article on Katie Couric titled, The IDF Failure to Come on October 7th. This is what they wanted it to be, because they were not available. And we rather called it, ready for this? you have to know, you have to hear the truth from an IDF soldier. And this is the first and only news article that's ever written like this, published on Katie Couric. You can look it up, Ariella Novak, Maya Bentwich, Katie Couric, and you can hear how the story of truth. Maya is actually the one who took across Jared and Ivanka and Mike Pence and all these people every day with her little bun on her head, just doing what she needed to do. And nobody told her this should be her job down south. She made it her responsibility, just like I've made it my responsibility to storytell, because if it wasn't for her, I don't think most of these stories would have got out into big politicians' ears or big important individuals. So I'm so thankful and filled with gratitude. She might be mad at me for saying all these things. I really am. And she did it in such a humble way of storytelling where you felt like the people who were murdered were back alive. So I would for sure nominate her.
Thank you.
Because I want her stories to come.
Yeah, thanks.
And I'll also add to that, secondary to that and a bit shorter. I was just at this dinner last night, and I had reached out to someone named Scott Jennings recently, just to get to know him. And the next day, this dinner, people who are creating the dinner reached out to me to say, we would love to have someone else come. We think you know who it should be. And I said, actually, is this somebody you'd want? Would you want, Scott to come? Oh my God, it would be an honor. I quickly text Scott, and within 2 days later, he said it was an honor that he's invited and he can come to speak. And I heard him speak last night on the stage, and he said the funniest thing. He goes, usually I'm on CNN as a commentator, and I have about 5 to 6 seconds, maybe tops, before someone cuts me off. But here I'm going to take my 20 minutes because I know you all want to hear. And it was really funny, but true. And I looked at him after he spoke so brilliantly, and I said, Scott, can you please run for president? His views were so on point. He's not Jewish. He's someone who believes in Israel, the state of Israel. And the first question when I saw him yesterday, I said to him, I know your visit was cut short last time because of the Iran war. Are you going back soon? Now, I had no insight into this. And he goes, yeah, I am. And he's returning soon. I said, the person that he works with, have you ever been either? And she said, no. And he goes, I think that the team should come too. So this is the point. It's putting ideas, or sharing ideas rather, that maybe, someone hasn't thought about, so we can enlighten all these other people about what Israel is, what it's not, and of course to eat all the food because it's so good. And I would definitely nominate Scott Jennings.
Thanks so much. These are wonderful nominations. This has been nothing short of a delight. Thank you very much.
The honor's mine, and thank you for having me.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People Do Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram @People Do Want to Know.